I think personally, me today, if I was not in a relationship today, I could not have a stay-at-home woman.
This is the sentence that turned LeBron James into the most hated man on the internet. The backlash lasted for weeks. Headlines called him an idiot. People said he was insulting his own wife. Savannah James stayed silent through it all until she finally broke her silence, and what she said changed everything. Here's the full story. The comment that started it all. If you scrolled past a clip this year of LeBron James saying he could not have a stay-at-home woman, and you felt your jaw drop a little, you weren't alone. Millions of people saw it. Millions of people argued about it. And by the time it was done making the rounds, it had been turned into headlines calling him an idiot and accusing him of shading stay-at-home moms, including his own wife. But here's the thing about viral clips. They almost never tell you the whole story. And in this case, the full story is actually a lot more interesting and a lot less dramatic than the headline, so let's slow it all the way down. Where did this come from? What did LeBron actually say? And what did his wife, Savannah James, really have to say about it when she finally addressed it herself? To understand how we got here, you have to go back almost 25 years to two teenagers in Akron, Ohio. LeBron James and Savannah James, born Savannah Brinson, met in high school. LeBron was already a basketball phenom at St. Vincent St. Mary, and Savannah was a student at Buchtel High School. They started dating as teenagers, and less than 2 years after LeBron was drafted into the NBA, they welcomed their first son, Bronny, born in October 2004. Savannah was still a teenager herself. She put her own plans on hold, moved with LeBron through Cleveland, then Miami, then back to Cleveland, then to Los Angeles, and quietly built the foundation that let LeBron become arguably the greatest basketball player who ever lived. LeBron proposed to her on New Year's Eve in Miami. In 2011, they married in 2013, and together they have 3 kids, Bronny, Bryce, and Zuri. For most of their 2 decades together, Savannah stayed almost entirely out of the spotlight. She wasn't doing interviews, she wasn't posting much. If you wanted to know what she thought about anything, you basically had to guess. That changed when she and her best friend of 17 years, entertainment executive April McDaniel, launched a podcast called Everybody's Crazy. And it was on that very podcast in a special guest episode where this entire story begins. In October 2025, Savannah and April did something they'd never done before. They invited a group of men onto the show for a guys edition of Everybody's Crazy, pulling in streamers Kai Cenat, Phantom, and Taco alongside Savannah's own husband, LeBron. The whole point of the episode was unfiltered, real conversation between men of very different ages and life stages, dating, honesty, ambition, what it means to actually show up for somebody. It wasn't a hit piece. It wasn't a gotcha. It was just guys talking the way the show always does. Somewhere in that conversation, the topic turned to what people look for in a partner as they get older, and LeBron, now 40 years old, 3 championships and 2 decades of fame behind him, said something about his own personal preferences that would end up traveling a lot further than that room ever expected.
I think personally, me today, if I was not in a relationship today, I could not have a stay-at-home woman.
He wasn't finished. He kept building on the thought, explaining exactly what he meant by it.
Just not, like, for me, who I am at 40 and what I got going on, just coming home and just seeing somebody just sitting on the couch every day.
That's the part of the sentence that would end up getting clipped, captioned, and blasted across every timeline in the country. But LeBron wasn't done talking, and what he said right after is the part almost nobody included.
Just sitting there, just chilling, like that wouldn't float for me.
Here's where it gets important. Immediately after that line, the line that became the whole controversy, LeBron pivoted directly to talking about Savannah, not a hypothetical woman, his actual wife.
So like, being where I am today, knowing, how she is, she's home with Zuri sometimes. Boom, I come home, she not there.
He kept going, describing what Savannah is actually doing with her time. Not sitting still, but constantly in motion.
She at work. Boom, she may be on the road with Bryce, at college. She's doing all these things.
And he closed the thought with what, in context, sounds less like a shot at anyone and more like a reflection on how people and needs change over time.
I think it's just who you are and where you are, at that point in your life, what kind of moves you. And I think everybody is different.
So in the full uncut version of what LeBron actually said, the sequence goes, he wouldn't personally want a partner who does nothing with her days, followed immediately by him pointing at Savannah as the walking counterexample, someone who's out working, traveling for their son's college life, building her own things. Multiple outlets that later dug into the full episode noted the same thing, that the stay-at-home woman line was a personal preference statement about compatibility at this stage of his life, immediately followed by praise for his own wife's drive, not a standalone insult lobbed at stay-at-home parents in general. But none of that context made the clip that went viral. What went viral was 11 seconds I could not have a stay-at-home woman. Just seeing somebody sitting on the couch every day just chilling, that wouldn't float for me, stripped completely away from the sentence that came right after it. And once that 11-second 11-second version hit social media in June 2026, it stopped being a podcast moment and became a full-blown cultural argument. The original clip itself was even resurfaced and recirculated by name on X months after the episode had actually aired, which is exactly how internet controversies are born in 2026. Old footage, new outrage cycle. What makes this whole story even more interesting is the setting it happened in. This wasn't a red carpet interview or a scripted sit-down with a reporter looking for a headline. This was LeBron, completely relaxed on his own wife's podcast, surrounded by guys he trusts, talking through a subject that comes up in basically every long relationship at some point. What you needed from a partner when you were younger versus what you need now. The episode itself was framed around exactly that kind of honest, unscripted male perspective, with guests spanning their 20s all the way up to LeBron at 40, all weighing in on how their idea of an ideal partner had shifted with age. That's important context because it means LeBron wasn't making a policy statement about how women should live their lives. He was answering a personal question about his own life at his own age, in the middle of a room full of people doing the exact same thing. It's also worth remembering who Savannah was in that room. She wasn't a bystander who happened to overhear her husband say something rough. She's the co-host. She's the person who built the show, who chose the topic, who was sitting a few feet away listening to her husband answer honestly in real time. If there was ever a moment where this comment was actually landing as a slight against her, she was the first person in position to feel it. And as we'll get into in part 3, her own reaction tells you a lot about how it actually landed. But none of that nuance mattered once the clip left the room. Once 11 seconds got cut out, captioned, and dropped onto timelines with zero context, it stopped being a conversation between friends and became a referendum on LeBron James as a husband, a partner, and, in the eyes of plenty of angry commenters, a hypocrite. So that's the setup. A 40-year-old man on his own wife's podcast honestly answering a question about what he'd want in a partner today, and getting immediately publicly misread as a shot at the woman sitting right next to him. In part 2, we're going deep into exactly how that misreading exploded. The reaction podcasts, the divided comment sections, the internet got it wrong debates that dragged on for weeks. And in part 3, we're going to hear directly from Savannah herself, because when she finally addressed it months later, her response says a lot more about their marriage than any 11-second clip ever could. The internet goes to war. By mid-June 2026, that 11-second clip wasn't just circulating, it had become one of the biggest relationship debates on the internet. Reaction channels, sports podcasts, relationship commentators, TikTok creators, everybody had a take, and almost nobody agreed. Coverage of the backlash noted the internet was absolutely divided within days of the clip resurfacing, and once you actually watch how the reactions played out, it's easy to see why. Take the Joe Budden podcast. Their episode reacting to the clip titled LeBron Under Fire, after saying he wouldn't want a stay-at-home woman, is a perfect snapshot of exactly how split the reaction was, sometimes within the same room, between the same two hosts. It opens with them literally hyping each other up to play the audio.
LeBron James was being interviewed the other day. And he offered his thoughts on stay-at-home women. Joe, hit play.
After they played it, the very first reaction in the room was a pretty pointed critique. One host immediately zeroing in on the difference between what LeBron said and what people heard.
Okay, so my first reaction is LeBron doesn't know what a stay-at-home mom is. Or a housewife.
That criticism didn't stop there. It kept building into a real argument about how domestic labor gets dismissed, a theme that came up again and again across nearly every reaction video on this topic.
Because I feel him in terms of being with a partner and just seeing them home doing nothing, laying in bed, not doing.
And then the pushback on that pushback, a co-host pointing out that LeBron never actually said the word mom in the first place.
But he didn't say mom, he said woman.
He didn't say, yeah, I'm about to say, he didn't say mom.
He said stay-at-home woman, meaning literally what he just described.
That single distinction, woman versus mom, ended up being the exact fault line the entire internet argument was fighting over for the next several weeks. Was LeBron talking about stay-at-home mothers doing the exhausting, invisible work of raising kids? Or was he talking about a hypothetical partner with no ambition and nothing going on in her life at all? Depending which side of that line you landed on, you either thought LeBron was being honest or you thought he was being completely out of touch. Eventually, one of the hosts gave what might be the most balanced take in the entire episode, separating ambition from not working and calling out exactly how much unpaid labor actually goes into a home.
Because that's what I hear. I hear like ambition. Like I don't want somebody that ain't got shit going on.
They kept unpacking it from there, landing on something close to a consensus by the end of the segment.
What people do at home raising kids doing all these things is work. So it's not doing nothing.
That kind of nuance LeBron probably meant ambition, not value of motherhood, but said it in a way that landed badly, is basically what you'll find if you go through any of the deeper dive reaction videos from that summer. One widely shared breakdown of the divided reaction specifically laid out both sides. Critics who felt LeBron was disrespecting the exhausting and visible labor that stay-at-home parents do every day, and defenders who pointed out he'd immediately followed the comment by praising his own wife's hustle in the very same breath. It wasn't just entertainment podcasts weighing in either. Sports commentary shows got into it too. On one such show, the hosts broke down not just what LeBron said, but what it says about masculinity, providing, and how much of this debate says more about the men reacting to it than it does about LeBron himself.
LeBron was recently on his wife's podcast, and he said that if he was a single man, if he wasn't in a relationship today, he couldn't date a stay-at-home woman, just a woman that sits around on the couch all day, just doing a bunch of nothing.
That set off its own extended back and forth about traditional gender roles, what it means to provide, and whether wealth changes what a healthy partnership even looks like. Proof that this 11-second clip had basically become a Rorschach test. Everybody who watched it saw a slightly different reflection of their own beliefs about marriage, money, and gender roles staring back at them. And that split wasn't just happening on podcasts. It played out across thousands of individual comment sections and video essays too. One widely circulated breakdown of the online divide walked through both camps in detail. On one side, women pointing out that being a stay-at-home mother is a full-time job in itself. Cooking, cleaning, childcare, logistics, emotional labor, and that reducing any of that to sitting on the couch ignored the reality of what that work actually looks like. On the other side, viewers who felt LeBron had been extremely specific in his wording, he said woman, not mom, and he explicitly described someone who does nothing at all, not someone raising children or running a household. That same video pointed out something else worth remembering. Savannah herself was, at various points in their relationship, effectively a stay-at-home parent, meaning if LeBron genuinely meant it as a blanket insult toward that role, he'd be insulting his own wife's past. The fact that he didn't seem to be doing that, and that Savannah didn't react like someone who felt insulted, became one of the strongest arguments on the context matters side of the debate. What's clear, watching all of these reactions back to back, is that almost nobody was actually arguing about the same 11 seconds. Some people were reacting to a rich man calling stay-at-home moms lazy. Other people were reacting to a guy explaining he wants an ambitious partner. Those are two completely different conversations. And because the viral clip never included the second half of LeBron's sentence, most viewers never even got the chance to realize they were having two different arguments about the exact same quote. By the time the dust settled, headlines were calling LeBron an idiot on one end, while other outlets were framing the same clip as a totally reasonable, honest answer taken out of context on the other. And through all of it, through weeks of debate, memes, and hot takes, there was one person who hadn't said a single word publicly about any of it: Savannah James herself. That silence didn't last forever. And when Savannah finally broke it, not with a statement, not with a press release, but sitting on a couch of her own, laughing about the whole thing, it changed the entire conversation. That's where we're headed next. Savannah finally speaks. For weeks, Savannah James said absolutely nothing about the clip, blowing up her husband's name across the internet. No statement, no Instagram post, no subtweet, just silence, while millions of strangers argued about what her own marriage supposedly looked like. Then, in early July 2026, she and April McDaniel sat down for a long-form interview on Angie Martinez's IRL podcast, and Angie naturally brought the clip up directly, asking Savannah if her husband had ever said anything on their own podcast that actually caught her off guard. Savannah didn't hesitate, and her reaction, completely unbothered, a little amused, told you everything about how much this controversy actually shook their marriage, which based on how she responded was not much at all. And then
going viral about him saying where he is now at 40, he couldn't have a significant other that when he came home was on the couch.
The line that would end up becoming its own viral moment all over again. Savannah's genuinely funny, genuinely honest reaction to hearing her own husband's quote played back to her.
And I'm like,
yeah, I think that was also news to me.
News to me.
That's it. That's the confrontation that some corners of the internet tried to turn into a full-blown marital crisis. Not a fight, not a public call-out, a wife laughing, admitting she hadn't even fully clocked the comment as being remotely about her because, as she explained next, she understood exactly what got lost in the edit.
Yeah. But also on the couch is not, they clipped it up. That's the thing about, like, they clipped it up.
She kept going, pointing at the exact same thing we broke down back in part 1. that LeBron's comment in the original episode was about personal evolution and life stages, not a verdict on anyone's worth.
He was talking about evolving and where you are in life.
Later in that same conversation, Savannah addressed the online reaction directly. The flood of comments, the assumptions, the outrage, and made it clear she wasn't losing sleep over any of it.
About it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot of misconceptions about stay-at-home moms.
That's the entire confrontation. A laugh, a little context, and a shrug from a woman who has spent over 2 decades building one of the most enduring relationships in sports and who clearly wasn't about to let one clipped-up quote define it. Her family's whole approach to fame has always leaned toward normalcy over spectacle, no cell phones before 13, no social media before 15, kids who still spend summers with their grandparents back in Ohio. That's not the household of 2 people at war over a soundbite. And honestly, if you actually go back and listen to how LeBron talks about Savannah and his family in general, outside of this one clipped moment, the picture gets even clearer. In a separate interview about how his family made his entire career possible.
I have the luxury of having an unbelievable wife and help around the household to where they allow me to be able to use all my time while I'm playing the game.
LeBron didn't hold back on how much he credits her. And in a completely different conversation, when the topic turned to relationships and not wanting to be alone, LeBron said something that lands very differently.
Well, I got to fight, crawl, scratch, fight, whatever to keep mine. I got to keep it. I got to do what I got to do. I don't want to be alone.
Once you know the full context of everything else he said about Savannah, put all of that next to each other. A man who says he'd fight to keep his marriage, who calls his wife the reason his entire career was even possible, who immediately followed his stay-at-home comment by praising exactly how much Savannah has going on. And the viral 11-second clip starts to look a lot less like a confession and a lot more like exactly what it was. One honest sentence, ripped out of a 40-minute conversation that traveled a lot further than the truth ever could. So here's where things actually stand. As of right now, there's no rift, no public fight, no sign whatsoever of any marital strain between LeBron and Savannah James. What there is a couple who've been together for over 2 decades, who still podcast about their lives on their own terms, and who, when the internet tried to manufacture a controversy out of 11 seconds of audio, responded with the same thing that's apparently carried their marriage this whole time. A laugh, a little honesty, and moving on with their lives together. If this caught your interest, don't miss out on the related videos in the suggested cards.